This meeting is being recorded by the Peabody School Committee's recording secretary. The matters listed below are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may, in fact, be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Mayor Betancourt couldn't be with us this evening, so I will be stepping as the vice chair. So if you could, please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. We have some special guests this evening, and I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Kerbel for some welcome and remarks to people who are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
So, thank you. Welcome everybody tonight, and we have two special guests that are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. It's two Carroll School students. I want to thank Tracy Smith, the principal, for coming here. There's a second school committee meeting in a row. She brought students from the Carroll School. So I want to thank you for that. I want to introduce two students. Jack Smith. Jack is a fifth grader at the Thomas Carroll Elementary School. He has an older brother at the Higgins Middle School and an older sister who attends the high school. He enjoys playing on the fifth grade basketball team, but his favorite sport is baseball. He is the catcher for his AAU Legends baseball team and the Cardinals for the Peabody Little League. When he gets older, he hopes to be an HVAC tech like his dad or a Major League Baseball player. Right, Jack? Either one. His friend Owen Jordan is here, and Owen is also a fifth grader at the Carroll School. He lives here in Peabody with his mom, dad, and siblings. He has two older brothers and a sister. He told me that he was the favorite of the family. Owen's oldest brother is a Marine and is currently deployed. He loves to play baseball and is currently playing on the fifth grade basketball team at Carroll. In his downtime, he loves to draw and go on bikes with his dog, Chloe. So, Jack and Owen, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Yep.
The superintendent's going to come out with you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mom and Dad, come up. We need to have video. Great job, guys.
Yeah, watch out. Going to move into the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve regular school committee meeting minutes of January 14th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mr. Arnottis. Roll call vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And she moved her seat. Approval of bills.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant A number 4395 dated January 28th, 2020, the amount of $886,408.17, subject to audit.
Okay, you've heard the motion by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant B number 4396 in the amount of $51,827.67, dated January 28th, 2020, subject to audit.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Carpenter, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 That's all, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I
Question.
see we have some visitors from the center school, it looks like. If there's something that they're interested in particular, can we take it out of turn?
Actually, let me see, where is it down here?
Participation?
Oh, public participation, oh, okay.
Is that right?
All right, as a courtesy, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
So moved. Yeah.
okay.
Where's public? Oh, there it is. I'm like, where did it go?
Hi, I'm Mary Henry, 15 Fay Avenue, Peabody, President of the Peabody Federation of Teachers. We're just coming to watch. They're here because our teachers and our members are being more involved. We have some interesting concerns over the need for the new center school, but we're not here to speak at this point in time. But thank you, I do appreciate it. We also have some things in process, so it wouldn't really be appropriate for our member to speak right now. But we do appreciate the opportunity and hoping very much to be involved and invested in hopefully getting the center school back on the list for a new building because it's desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at public participation?
Madam Chair,
Okay.
if I can
Thank you.
just, I didn't intend to offend, and I was always happy to see so many friendly faces, particularly from the center. So I didn't mean to speak out of turn. Okay.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for coming. And it is nice to see everyone coming to the meetings. We really do appreciate it, and we definitely want to hear from you and to work with you. During public participation, the committee is not allowed to address you, but I will tell you that the center school is a priority. It truly is, and we understand the difficulties going on in that building. And you will hear a bit more during a presentation on one of the subcommittee meetings, but really, thank you all very much for coming. Okay, continued business. The MSBA Higgins project, that's actually my topic. I can just assure you we are still working on the closeout. It's a very thorough process, and I can tell you, and school committee members will enjoy hearing this, as will the public who watch this on PATV. We're looking into new microphones for the meeting.
Yay.
So there's some progress, and hope to give you better news at a future meeting, but it's in the works. You're checking to make sure they work tonight. Okay. Budget updates. Again, this is one of my questions. I know I was going to ask a couple questions to Mr. Scanlon, who unfortunately could not be with us this evening, but if I could, Dr. Kerbel, is there anything that you would like to bring forward about the budget updates at all for this year?
Sure. Want to thank Joe Scanlon for all his work on the budget for FY20. Still learning every day the nuances of the school budget. He and I checked in together every day this week. I think we met several hours. And just when we think that we're doing okay, then we find out there's another little niche that we have to take care of. Then we find how we're going to offset maybe some deficits that are creeping up. So there are structural deficits to the budget that we have to deal with. And I think those structural deficits have been known, whether it's overtime or whether it's the substitute account, transportation, not transportation, special education. Maybe there's some issues there as they have been in the past, but I think those might be covered. One of the things that I just want to say that when you have a structural deficit, when you know going in that you don't have enough money to run the school year, and you try to offset that somehow by grants and other type of money that we could look at, sometimes it can be a challenge. So right now, I think the business administrator learning about the system, he's been here since October. He's done a great job in terms of looking at the history of the accounts, working very closely with City Hall. So I think I think by our next meeting, we should be very confident about how we'll end up in FY20. And I expect next week for FY21, business administrator and I will be working with our principals to take a look at all of the accounts as we look at FY21, and also take a look at level needs and also additional needs that we need. We do have the new Chapter 70 money. I keep looking over here, sorry. And we have the name of it, the Student
Student Opportunity Act.
Student Opportunity Act that last I heard should bring in $1.2 million into the district. And that's $1.2 million that we're supposed to account for in some type of application to the Commission of Education. So that should be additional funds, and not the kind of funds that makes up structural deficit. So I would expect that we would bring forth to the school committee a level needs budget, so a maintenance of effort budget, if you will, which means if we just take all the salaries and supplies and everything else and just turn that over and add the 2% raise or 2.5% raise or cost of living COLAs to that, that would be, X amount of money. Above and beyond that would be the 1.2 million that we would have to account for that would make the difference in terms of student achievement. And there is some particular language that you have to use. So I think by the time we meet by next school committee, I should be able to really talk with a lot of confidence about FY20 and feel really confident about what our needs are for FY21. So I have a different set of eyes that I'll bring to the budget, and also the way, not the way I was brought up, I shouldn't say that. I think it was the way that through the systems I worked with, how we looked at budgets. Peabody has its own nuance. Joe and I are learning about that. And one of the things I can say, probably in any district I've been in, it's been a very cooperative relationship between City Hall and the school department. Okay, so I enjoy all the folks that are at City Hall. We have a great relationship, and I can speak the same about Joe.
Very good.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, comments from the members? Okay, thank you, Dr. Kerbel. Next item on the agenda, Welch School feasibility appropriation. The current status of the Welch School appropriation is that the Welch School Building Committee will be meeting Thursday morning to get an update. We're presently in the owner's project manager selection process. Advertisement for applications from owners project management companies is being placed in the central register, and those applications will be forthcoming to the district, and then there will be an additional process where those will be evaluated, and the target date for the selection is April. Anyone have questions on that? Next item, Emerson Park bus routes. Mr. Hockman.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. We put this on the agenda from the last meeting as I was hoping to get some more information from perhaps a traffic study or from Captain Richards or from our transportation department. I understand the mayor's not here this evening. I guess we'll put it over for another meeting, but
Actually, no,
we
don't
do have some
worry.
stuff. Good, thank you.
Dr. Kerbal has some information for you.
So I have a statement per Captain Richards that I'd like to read. Let's see if this answers the question. It may not. I have another response, actually from Joe Scanlon. Okay, but let me read what Captain Richards wrote. This is regarding the lights in the turn at Lowell and King. So Captain Richards met with Gara regarding the lights at Lowell and King Streets. There was concern that the buses were having difficulty making a left turn onto Lowell to head west. Officer Dowd spent time observing the buses coming down. He had no time observed any buses having difficulty making the turn. Joe De Silva from the fire department was also consulted about moving the stop line on Lowell Street back, as well as changing the timing of the lights at Lowell and King to allow the buses more time to make the light. It was Joe De Silva's opinion that since they added the left turn lane on Lowell Street, moving the line back would not be a good idea. Also, changing the lights to add extra time coming off King Street would certainly cause more of a backup on Lowell Street than there is already. No issues were observed. Okay. Next, buses using Emerson Street. Again, observations were done watching buses traveling down Emerson Street. At no time were buses seen speeding. Buses were being driven in a cautious and controlled manner. When they reached Lowell Street, usually 4 buses in a row, a vehicle would stop and allow all 4 buses to travel out onto Lowell Street with no problems at all. Our streets are public ways, and if the buses are allowed by statute to travel down those streets with no problems, then a resident complaint does not dictate whether a bus can travel down that street or not. And no issues were observed. The end.
Firstly, I'll make a motion to receive both of those documents.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made to receive and seconded by Mr. D'Amico. Okay,
Okay.
Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, thank you. So without having the opportunity to review those documents before this meeting, and I don't know why that happened, but typically we would receive documents in our packet. We would have an opportunity to review them for a few days and perhaps talk to the authors of the documents if they're not here before us, like tonight. Talking about, first I heard you say, Captain Richards, say that he didn't observe any difficulty with any bus making a left-hand turn off of King Street onto Lowell Street under the conditions that presently exist. And I'd like to talk to him about that because I'm not aware of any buses going down King Street at this time. It's my understanding that they're all going up down Emerson Street, up and down Emerson Street. For someone, and I'm not sure who said that a citizen's complaint shouldn't dictate where we put or have buses travel so long as they're lawfully operating lawfully. And I'm not suggesting that the buses are speeding, or I'm not suggesting that the bus drivers are doing anything inappropriate while they're driving the buses. But it's my understanding that that was the basis for the buses to stop going down up Thorndike and down Columbus, which is what had occurred for as far as I've lived in Peabody until about 2 years ago. And then they changed because I was at least under the impression, although I don't have any direct knowledge of, a complaint made by a resident on Lowell Street, somewhere around the Columbus Road intersection. So I'm not particularly happy with the manner in which we're receiving this information, nor the information received. So what I'd like to do is to put this back on the agenda. I'd like Mr. De Silva and Mr. Captain Richards to come before us if that's the way they want to proceed with this, or we can put this into subcommittee and have a meaningful conversation about it, but a mere statement based upon what they observed without having an opportunity to talk to them about that doesn't really aid this conversation too much, in my opinion. I have had some other thoughts on how buses can travel from the Higgins to West Peabody, which is where they're going. We're talking about the buses going west from the Higgins primarily. It would seem to me that we have other routes available for these buses that would not impact a street or a neighborhood. For example, buses exiting Higgins, going up past the police station to Washington Street, down Linfield Street to Summit to 128, down off Route 1 interchange and down Lake Street. You have to pass the McCarthy. It's a short distance from there to go to the Burke in the west, and those are all major thoroughfares without having to go through any neighborhoods. And those are the conversations I was hoping to have when I put this on the agenda a few months ago. So if we can keep this on the agenda and through the chair, either invite the authors of those documents and perhaps our transportation director again, which may be better served by putting this in a subcommittee and having a more having a conversation on a time other than a Tuesday night, if that impacts the people who I'm asking to appear. I'm not convinced which way would be better, so I'm happy to have an open mind on where that meeting takes place or when. We do have a transportation subcommittee, I think. No?
No.
No. So I don't know where it would fall under in terms of a subcommittee.
Actually,
Maybe government,
Mr. Miko?
Would that fall under safety?
perhaps. I mean, I don't, it's not really a safety issue per se, but, I mean, if we can find a place for it and deal with it in a subcommittee, it just may be a better way to deal with it, I think.
Okay. Mr. Arnottis?
It may be, my subcommittee might be the most appropriate.
Government
place for
affairs.
that. Yeah, liaison to the city council and that type of.
So, I mean, I'd make a motion to put it into Mr. Arnottis' subcommittee if that's, I want to work on it. I don't want to keep
Okay.
it on the agenda and keep kicking it down the road.
Okay.
I'd really like to work on this.
Would the members be amenable to letting Mayor Betancourt determine how he wants to proceed with this? Because it would come up at the next meeting, and whether it be at a full meeting or in a subcommittee, just to see what he would like? Or do you want to put it, what was the committee you were mentioning, Mr. Arnottis?
It's the liaison committee. to
The
city
liaison?
council
City Council.
I just call it government affairs, right?
yeah.
Don't we
and
have a,
Government affairs, it's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that actually, that might be the best one.
we don't have an upcoming meeting scheduled, but when we can put something on the books, and if we want to invite some folks from the police department, I'm sure
I-
the city council will have an interest in this, so.
through the chair, I certainly don't think it's a big enough issue to create an ad hoc committee.
No,
So
I don't think so.
I just want to, like I said, get some work done on this and come to a resolution. If there's a reasonable basis for continuing the transportation as it exists, then there's a reasonable basis for it. I don't know that I heard that in what Dr. Kerbel read, and I'd certainly like to have an opportunity to have the conversation so that we can make that determination. That's all I'm asking for.
And
Okay, Mr.
Dr. Kerbel, yes, you
Just
had
two
an idea
seconds.
too. Getting back to you.
So I thought this was settled, actually, and so I apologize. The memo that I wrote came out today, January 28th, 2020, so I was busy this afternoon, so I apologize if you didn't get the notice. I'll make sure you get the notices ahead of time. Let me just get involved and take care of this. Okay?
Okay.
Let me just, when I'll work to make sure it gets on the right committee, make sure the right people are there, I'll take care of it. All right?
Was that amenable to everyone? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. But we'll keep it on the agenda so that you can get a report next time. Or when
I'd
it-
say let's put it on the agenda at Dr. Kerbel's discretion. Let him give him an opportunity to get something done.
All right. Okay, next item, update on the pilot attendance policy. Mrs. Carpenter.
Thank you. I just, when they first brought it forward, I just asked to get an update to see how it was going because of the changes. And I think, is there somebody here to speak on it? Yep.
Oh, Dr. Lewis.
Pass this around to everybody. You got the motion to receive this. This is our latest attendance.
Motion to receive.
Pass it around.
And when you speak on it, can you just for the audience's consideration, the old way and then the new way, and I wanted to see how things are working. It's strictly informational.
Thanks, everybody. I first want to introduce Alyssa DeMaria. She's our attendance officer, and she's been playing a great role in making this attendance policy come to life. I'm not altogether clear on the details before this attendance policy came to be, but I know there was a lot of data that supported its existence and its initiation. I can say, being at the high school for most mornings and some afternoons, it certainly has made a difference. The data speaks for itself. This document shares with you how it's not pushed a needle in a strong way, but these kinds of policies really change culture. Some of the changes that have happened since the previous one are that there are teams of people that are involving themselves in conversations with parents and students about their attendance. There are a little bit more teeth in some of the conversations they can have with respect to attendance. The biggest one is that, while we won't be penalizing a student for their academic performance, this is a behavior that we're trying to encourage them to come to school. They may lose credit toward graduation for a course if they miss too much school. Ms. DeMaria works very closely with the deans at the high school, and she can give you some more details about where those conversations are going. And I think you'll find that we're in a place now, it's moving in the right direction, but that we need more time to continue to see what's going on.
Good evening. I think just to add to what Dr. Lord said, I think when we met last time, we talked about changing the culture and having a different conversation and holding students and parents accountable that you have to be present. 99% of life is being present. And I think what I have seen, and in my discussions, not only in my observations, my involvement in parent and student meetings more so now than ever, and speaking with the deans, that there's a conversation. There's more conversations. Students are coming to their deans. They're concerned. Parents, the high school is being flooded with calls over these ends. So it's sparking a conversation. It's calling attention. And I think that's what we were looking for, is to sort of start by changing, in addition to changing the data, obviously, of kids being present, is to start that conversation. We're having more meetings with parents and kids. And I believe, in speaking with just recently, one of the deans we were talking about, and the data isn't out yet for quarter 2, but we were trying to look at the number of students who received an N for first quarter versus the number of students who received an N for second quarter. And again, just speaking specifically with one dean this week, she said, this particular dean said, what a significant change. I can look at the list of quarter 1 and my list of quarter 2, where I have a handful of kids who've received second Ns versus, and some of those are new students, so weren't initially some of those students on the first quarter. So I think we are moving in the right direction. I think it's obviously it's a little bit too soon for us to have all of the data, but I can say that because I cover the district, these conversations are trickling down into our middle school and our elementary schools. I'm having discussions with parents where parents are bringing up, well, tell me a little bit more about the high school. I've heard about the pilot policy. Is that ever come? So I think people are having that conversation. I think that's what we were trying to do, in addition to having kids come to school and be present and be successful.
Yeah, one of the comments that I often make in these meetings about attendance is kids, we have 365 days a year, 180 days we ask you to come to school. The 185 days, they're all yours. You do whatever you want. But we love you. We want you to be here. We want you to come to school and be part of this community. And if you're not present, you can't learn to the degree to which you might if you're present. It's nothing like being with your friends, with your teachers, going through an instructional day, even though you might be challenged in some way. Some of the statistics that we were looking at last year, we've shared before, but just to remind everybody, the average student at Peabody High was missing almost a month of school a year. They're missing, we're around 90% attendance. That's one of the lower attendance rates for high schools in the state. That means 180 days, 10%, 18 days the average kid is missing school. That's over 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks of school. We can't be doing that and be deemed successful. So the numbers are moving in the right direction. There's a component of support and frankly love. The faculty loves their kids. They want them to be there. They want them to learn. I've had conversations where the faculty said, I've never seen all my kids in class before. I go to the attendance and think period by period attendance, and everybody's there. And And they've made those comments, that they've never had that event happen. Not so much in the last couple of months. Maybe it's the flu, maybe it's other things going on. But for those first couple of months of school, we had 95, 96, 97% attendance. It was awesome. I encouraged the student body yesterday to push back on their attendance and start making that commitment to come to school because we care about them. We want them there. And that's the main reason they should come. Is because, we did some math. A $22 million building, every class that a student misses is about $10. But they don't go to school, $60, $70 a day is out the taxpayer's window. So, I would love for kids to even consider that. Money isn't everything, but it's something, and it costs a lot of money to get these kids to just be educated. So let's take advantage of, the only country in the nation that offers free public education to the degree to which we do across the entire population. So let's take advantage of that if we can. Any questions on the data? We'll have more for you by the end of the year. I don't know how many kids are going to not earn credit for the if they took a class in the first semester, and it was a semester-long class, we won't know that till the end of next week. We're going to try and get report cards out by Friday. So the N will still be there, but the grade will still be behind the scenes. And everybody can go and look online at Aspen and see their grade at any time. So that when they see an N on the printed report card, their percent still keeps rolling along. And we won't be penalizing them academically, but we want to give them a little flag if they're not coming to school to the degree to which they need to. Make sense?
It does. Mrs. Carpenter, you had a question?
Thank you. Just want to thank you for coming and updating the committee on the policy. I do appreciate all of your efforts to get our kids into school. It is very important. We can't teach them anything if they're not present. My initial concerns when the policy was first brought forward were the penalties academically, the ends, and that's kind of where my interest lies, where your efforts to get them into school, and we talked about, being late so many times turned into them just not coming because they didn't want the other penalty. So, I'm kind of looking on that area that the penalties aren't so severe on the other end, that we're hurting them in another way. It sounds to me like there needs to be some more time. I'm hoping maybe we can meet again. When do you think another good time to get another update would be to kind of see how we're looking?
Maybe after quarter three.
Yeah.
After quarter three, say middle of April.
Okay.
Right after we get back from the break, maybe.
Okay.
That would probably be a good sense, because we'll have another quarter three report card. We'll have another sense of the ends for the full-year classes. It's a culture-changing event, it really is. The best high schools have 94 to 96% attendance, and that's where I'd like to get. That's our goal, 94 to 96% attendance would be awesome. Elementary schools are like 97, 98, 99. They're way up the charts.
Yeah. No, and like I said, I do appreciate the efforts. I was just nervous on the back end of some of the kids that might have a problem with that, and it's not a problem that they can change, so they're getting hurt another way. But we did talk about the conversations that you're having and the counseling on that, so I just wanted to see how that was working out, but it sounds like we can talk again.
Oh, definitely. The conversations are along the lines of, we're not here to hurt kids.
Right.
But there's a behavior that we are trying to target.
Yep.
Nothing personal. It's a behavior that we're trying to target.
Right.
Yes, it's difficult to get out of bed when you're an adolescent. We've talked about start times before. But hey, this is where we are right now. We need to help you get there. So we're not here to punish them. The deans make the final call on the loss of credit. I don't imagine there's going to be an awful lot of kids that are actually going to lose credit because there are issues that come up. They are sensitive to that information.
And just to add to that, I know one of the things we talked about the last time was that other piece of it, that there are things that happen outside of school, and whatever that may be. So I do find that we are, sort of as a team, we're utilizing supportive services. I'm making referrals to outside agencies. The deans are helping me. We're making counseling referrals. We're utilizing our existing supports within the school. And when we can't utilize those, we're trying to get creative and using things like CSA if we can get the community service agency involved. So we're doing those things as well, and we're trying to reach out to families to say, listen, we know sometimes when kids aren't coming that, it goes beyond just a school thing. So we are having those discussions. Just today I dropped off the Mass Health application to a mom who needs insurance in some of the free clinics. So we're doing some of that work as well to try to sort of help families to get their kids to school. So
Great. Thank you for that. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
On our mantra, every student present and punctual every day. Right?
That's right.
Mr.
Okay,
Olympia.
tomorrow.
Oh, hang on, we've got another question from Mr.
Yeah.
Olympia.
Yes, thank you again for coming. Appreciate it. And so have you seen an increase in students
have. I think, yes, I've made a lot of referral. We've talked about, like some kid, and actually, because it's a business line, my phone, I'm actually getting even more calls from not just parents, but kids. Kids are reaching out. And, you know, and what I usually tell kids is, you know, this is not to be punitive, we're here to help you. And it may feel that way sometimes. But if there's somebody, whether it's not me, whether it's your dean, whether it's your guidance counselor, we're all working together, we'll help you. But I do feel like there's been a shift, there's a change in.
To me, that's a great sign that they're not looking at it like something's punitive.
Right.
They're reaching out for help, and I think that's what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
So that makes me feel good that maybe we're kind of changing the climate a little bit, that it's not.
Yeah. It's the relationships that are gonna save this. There's some
Right.
extraordinary teachers there that really care about their kids, they want them to be in school, and we will continue to have those conversations and have the kids actually believe my statement that I just made. Because kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's one of the most loving high schools I've ever worked, and those people really care about those kids, and they want them there. They want them there. They don't hold them accountable, they're parents, but they want them there.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you
Thank you,
both.
everyone.
Thank you very much. The next item is regarding the Kara Murtagh Memorial Scholarship. Mrs. Carpenter.
Thank you. The last time we were here, I did mention starting a scholarship fund under Ms. Murtagh's name, and we have information here that one has been started by the Peabody Education Foundation, and the criteria and all of the scholarship information is in here, and I think it's absolutely fabulous. I just wasn't aware of it, and I wanted to make sure that we had started something in her name. I am more than happy to just jump in and contribute to this unless the board still sees that they would like to start another one. I'm not sure. This was something for us to discuss as a group.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Any discussion? Mr. Hockman.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Through you to Ms. Carpenter. I also sit on the Peabody Education Foundation Board, and we did talk about this scholarship opportunity we've been talking about it for a little while now, almost immediately after Ms. Murtagh's passing. And there have been a substantial amount of donations made to the Peabody Foundation in Kara's memory. We at the Peabody Ed Foundation are in the process of determining how much money to allocate to the scholarship and how much money of what came by way of donation to maintain a fund so that there's money available moving forward. I'm happy to report back to the school committee as a whole as those things develop so that there's a better understanding of how the scholarship will flesh out. We don't really, we saw some materials today that are kind of a work in progress. So if it's the will of the committee to piggyback, if you will, onto that scholarship, I'm happy to report back when we get more information.
Mr. Miko?
I agree with Mr. Hockman and Ms. Carpenter. I think we could piggyback on that. Peabody Ed Foundation was very special to Kara. A lot of those donations were going back to teachers, and she was a teacher right to the end, and I think she'd appreciate that money in her name would be going back to the teachers, because it would be going back to the kids in classrooms, and she just had such a passion for her kids. And I think I would be okay with piggybacking on the Peabody Ed Foundation here and getting as many people to donate and get as many funds in the hands of teachers so they can do their thing.
Okay. Mr. Olympia, Mrs. Carpenter?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was great. I read the criteria, I read the guidelines on it. It's everything I think that this board would have probably looked for. I see no reason to, start another one if we can just make the one that's already started bigger and better and help contribute to it. I would like to maybe just kind of get some updates and maybe help out in some form or fashion contributing to that scholarship committee. I think this, board, we all cared about Kara very deeply, and this is something that I was looking forward to participating in, and I think it's laid out very nicely.
Mr. Arnottis?
Thank you. Just very quickly, I agree. I think this is a fantastic idea. And I do also, I know the foundation is such a collaborative effort. I do want to give a shout out to now former Councilor Gravel. I know he had spoke about this in a bit of detail at the Legacy Wall reveal about a week or two ago, and talked about how the dynamic of this and how much of the resources would go towards it. So I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'm completely on board.
And Mr. Olympia?
I agree 1,000%.
Okay. Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, just kind of in closing this conversation, if, Ms. Carpenter, if you want to talk to me afterwards, if you want to be on the committee, you know, even though you're not on the foundation, I'm happy to have that conversation with Mr. Gravel and other people over there, and I don't see why, you know, I think that would be a great idea from someone from this committee being on that scholarship committee.
Sure, we can talk, thank you.
I'm just going to speak for a moment. I will be honest, I was really very excited when you brought up the scholarship, and I was looking forward to a specific school committee scholarship. Years ago, the school committee gave a scholarship every year, and it was stopped. And the thought that it was going to come back and actually be named in honor of Kara Merteg really made me feel wonderful, so that's what I thought we were going to talk about tonight. I just do want to say that right now there are other scholarships in the system also being named for Kara Merteg, so there will be probably 3 or 4 additional scholarships in her memory, and I put that out there in case you would like to think about renewing a school committee scholarship that would be given in her honor. But that's up to you. I don't know what you would like to do, and if you're prepared for a vote right now on, you know, contributing to the Peabody Ed Foundation, that's fine as well. Mrs. Carpenter?
Mrs. Dunn, the school committee scholarship that you spoke of, how did that start and how was it maintained? And can we get more information about it? I have no problem adding more things in Kara's name and sending out more scholarship. I mean,
I know.
the more the merrier. I mean,
That's one of the things
You-
I was hoping for, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can contribute, we can be part of this, we can be part of that. You know, those scholarships mean a lot to people when they graduate. And I would be more than happy to do both. Could you kind of maybe jog your memory and kind of go back a little bit?
I can go back and find out what year it stopped.
Yeah, and how it was maintained and some of the criteria. Do you have any of that type of stuff? Can we look into it a little bit more?
Definitely, yep, I can talk to
But still
Mrs.
moving forward
Marcarelli.
with the Education Foundation and, you know, that it has already taken off so
Oh,
greatly.
yeah, yes, they've already started
Yeah,
theirs.
yeah, no, let's keep looking at scholarships and stuff. No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything?
Well, if
to
everybody
add?
else says so.
Yeah, well, it was your topic, so
Me
we
and you
brought it
just
to
talking.
Would you like to keep this on the agenda, and we'll you know, everyone,
Sure, yeah,
Can
if
you
you
get
could bring
back to you?
stuff back for
Okay.
us. Yeah.
all right, so we'll hold this for the next agenda. All right, thank you. Okay. All right. Dr. Kerbel, the superintendent's report, and I do have to apologize because in our packet, we had something which I just would like to bring attention to, if I can find it. It was your budget schedule. And we could have discussed it when you talked about the budget, and I can understand how we didn't because of the
So that
change
budget,
tonight.
the budget, it's going to change, okay? So
okay, so,
we'll send you a revised budget right away,
okay,
when Joe comes back.
thank you, all right. But
Okay,
thank you for
can I
that
ask you
proposed calendar.
if anyone is here regarding field trips? Is anybody here regarding field trips? Okay. Is it- all right.
You came to see the vision of the graduate, didn't you? Yeah.
Okay, so you're not here for field trips, then I'm going to go back to the top. First of all, I just want to say that I was at the high school this morning for a few hours, And it was what a great morning. I actually called my wife on the way back to the office. I said, wow, it was great. Being at the high school was very positive. Walking through, Dr. Lord and I walked through a lot of classes, met a lot of students. And students were, I think students are pretty resilient. They're always, I think, positive. But the staff was very positive. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when I got introduced to people and the teachers were talking about their work with kids and how excited they were. That's great. That's the kind of thing that tells you that the culture is pretty healthy. And I want to congratulate, a lot of people that are in the room for that. Doesn't happen by accident. It actually happens on purpose. And that, so a lot of people, I just want to say that I thought was very positive. Shifting gears, I put in your packet some information regarding the integrated MTSS project with the University of Connecticut. So Peabody's going to partner with the University of Connecticut in the Hill for Literacy. And so there's a center called the Center for Behavioral Education Research, the NEOG School of Education at the University of Connecticut. And what they're going to do is they're just going to be working with our 8 elementary schools, primarily K-2, on tiers 1, 2, and 3. And basically what they're going to do is they're going to provide, I think, support and instruction for our staff. First off, the first year, which will be this year, they'll be working with our leadership team from each school. And those folks are being identified now, and we have particular dates in which they'll receive training from, I'm going to say UConn. The first year, which is be next year, will be a lot of work internally with people that will be selected as coaches, and as well, so we're going to build the internal coaching capacity, as well as people from the Hill for Literacy to provide instructional coaching to staff. And this is really key because the key area has to do with Tier 1, which is instruction. Following that, Year 2 will be Tier 2, which will be interventions for kids. Then Year 3 will be behavioral support for students who need Tier 3 support. So it's a 5-year project, actually. And the best news, no cost to the district. It's like manna from heaven, as I say. So we're going to get a lot of support. Meanwhile, I think we're going to also work with Hill for Literacy to provide support for teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5. So we can have a nice complement in reading. So that's it for the UConn project. We have a strategic planning meeting January 30th. So it's this 30 from 3:30 to 5:30. And I think what we're going to do is take a little step back, take a look, which I think I've wrote to you offline. And going to be looking at the comprehensive district review report, take a look at some areas that need to be addressed. Right? And one of the things I mentioned before is that we're going to keep Kara Murtag's vision, turn it into a framework, which will be revised. So one of the things I just want to say publicly, I know everybody has a strong affinity for Kara's work. And if Kara continue her work, like any author would update and revise one's own work, which I do myself, which you do. This is what we do as professionals. So when we make changes, we keep what's good, and we make adjustments which make sense, so we can address our needs in the district. It's the only way to get to the finish line, which is to have a great school system. Can't be afraid to make changes. And so a lot of that happens Thursday. And I know some of the school committee members will be there. All right, so you're going to hear that message Thursday. We're working with Curtis Bates, and he's going to be the facilitator. He's from Seaside Consultants, and he will be the driver, a facilitator, not so much the driver. He'll be the facilitator of the 2-hour session. I want to talk about the Caring and Healing Plan Committee. I think included in your packet a list of all the captains from the different subcommittees. And I've been meeting with the captains, find out about their work. And the liaison is a pretty good woman I know, so she's on the list too. And she's doing some good work as well. I want to, and I'm pretty excited because when you're trying to heal the community, you can't do it alone. And so a lot of people are stepping up. I want to thank a lot of the staff members that are on these subcommittees. Some of them are captains. And I want to thank them. I'm very excited about where we're going to end up. And so I always say, look at with the end in mind. I say that we're going to have a wonderful program in May, and hopefully we'll have a new healing ground and garden in June. I want to read something that I got, and this is from Senator Joan Lovely, State Senator of the 2nd Essex District, who wrote the following. Dear Peabody Schools, in honor of Superintendent Kara Murtagh and her enormous contributions to the city of Peabody and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I requested that the Senate adjourn in her memory. Enclosed, please find copies of the adjournment. Superintendent Murtagh's life is now permanently spread upon the record of the Senate to be memorialized forever. Superintendent Murtagh has left behind an amazing legacy, and I know I can say that she will be missed dearly. She was a dear friend and mentor to so many, and we know she is watching over Peabody with pride. May she rest in peace, and may you find solace in your memories of her. With warmest regards, Joan Lovely. And she wrote a nice little note, and included in this is, I think, is this in your packet, by the way? This might have, I think not, because we just got it. And so I have a copy of the adjournment. I'll make sure that you get a copy, and get a copy of the letter, okay?
Motion to receive Senator Lovely's letter and attachment.
Thank you.
And while we're there, motion to receive the attendance report that we received at the earlier
Okay,
presentation.
anyone? You good? Okay. So the next piece is, I want to talk about the realization of the vision of the graduate. And so there's going to be a presentation by Dr. Lord. He can introduce his guests. And so I just want to say that when Dr. Lord presented it to me in my office, we used the big screen, right? I was very energized. And I was energized not because the principal and the assistant superintendent of schools was highly motivated and really energized, okay, but I think the deliverables are memorable, and in fact, he's going to talk about how memorable they are. So, Dr. Lord.
Thanks, everybody. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you some extraordinary vision that Kara saw.
You need to use a microphone, Dr. Lord.
Okay.
You're on television.
Very good.
I want to share an extraordinary vision that Kara saw, and she and I talked about this last summer. And I am delighted to bring 2 members of the high school team that brought this to life over the last few years. It wouldn't be fair if they weren't involved in this conversation. Jared Haas, Director of Teaching and Learning, you can come up and join me. Chris Vassar, he's our TV studio teacher and instructional rounds person. And these guys do an awful lot for that school, and just 2 of the great examples of the wonderful instruction going on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through what's happened at Peabody High School over the last 3 years. What you're about to see is a presentation that we made to the NAAC Commission yesterday. The NAAC Commission commissions and accredits all 660 high schools in New England. I'm one of the commissioners. I'm responsible for about 130 high schools on my team. Peabody's not on my team, They're going to be going through the ENEAS visit at our next one in March, so we should have some public information available for our visit from this past September. When we showed this to the commission yesterday, they were blown away. The new commission standards are going to be based on a 5-level rubric, and I'll start off with the good stuff right at the beginning. The 5-level rubric that they're going to be rating high schools on in the future, the highest level is called transforming. It says the school has used one or more principles of the standards of the NEASC to drive innovation and transformative practices to fully implement school's vision of the graduate. And the school is a lighthouse for educators for other schools by modeling and sharing their transformative processes. This stuff that you're about to see is years ahead of its time. The next 10 years, every high school in New England is going to be accredited on the stuff that these folks have done for the last 3 years. And we're going to start with how Mr. Haas went through the vision of the graduate with the faculty at the high school.
Thanks for having us tonight. So we talked to you a little bit earlier last year about the vision of the graduate, and we talked about how the vision of the graduate, it came out of the NEASC standards, and about 10 years ago at the high school, we had a former version of the vision of the graduate, and that vision of the graduate was worked on the same way by teachers and input, and it was written and it was put on the wall, and over time, as there were other priorities, that vision sort of fell by the wayside. And what we decided is that we would create something that was invested by the entire community, that we could actually live every day in school. So it wouldn't just be something on the wall that people would look at and say, that's nice. Something that students could internalize, something that could be assessed, because if you don't assess something, it doesn't get followed through on. So we knew that this vision of the graduate had to take shape, and it had to have meat to it in order for the students to take it seriously. So we spent an entire year developing this vision of the graduate. And we involved every department. We felt every department had to have a say. It wasn't just about the core departments. It was about all departments having equal say in what they believe is essential for students when they graduate from high school to be successful in the 21st century. It's a different way of looking at school now. It's not just about learning the subject matter. It's also coupled with what are those life skills that students need in order to be college and career ready, but also to be able to live a life that they can give back to society. So we came up with these 7 standards, and we talked about each of these standards was a different attribute that makes you a successful person. And we decided that we wanted to make this a living document where it would not just be part of class, but it would be in the school culture and our policies, in the way we think about school. And that really has formed this vision of the graduate. Kara Murtagh adopted this as our district vision of the graduate. And in doing so, she took the work from the high school, merged it with some of the great work going on at the middle school and elementary school, and now we have this district vision of where we want to go.
So what's going on here, this is the district vision of the graduate, which was presented to all of the K-12 educators by Kara back in August. Our number one goal, you might remember, when she shared this with the school committee and with the community, is to showcase student work linked to the vision of the graduate K-12. So what does it mean to be a team player in the 4th grade? What does it mean to be a global thinker as a kindergartner? What does it mean to be a problem solver in an 8th grade art class? You'll see how the high school has taken all 7 of these elements and wrapped them right into the curriculum and started putting them on report cards. There are very few high schools out in New England that are actually putting degree of proficiency with respect to those 7 elements on their report cards. Some very important information. So next we're going to go and take a look at how the high school staff came together to assess each of those 7 elements with the 7 rubrics that you see. Mr. Bassett, you're on.
And if you do look at the 7 indicators, I think one of the incredibly important part of this is that we're trying to make a link between what you're learning in school and what it is to be a human being. What are the things that you're going to use in your life to be successful? So when we're saying, when you look at those 7 indicators, you're seeing problem solvers. We're trying to make that link, because if the students don't understand how important their education is to their future, and they don't see the practicality in that education, it can kind of get lost in why they're there in the first place. So we also we didn't want to have a holistic view where we couldn't measure anything, and we wouldn't be able to give proper feedback to students, and the staff wouldn't be able to understand it. So we got together one day with the staff of volunteers, and we went through each indicator, and we came up with these rubrics. And if you look at the rubrics, you can see that they're each of these indicators are easy to see how to measure them, because we're going to put this measurement on the report card. And if you look, it goes from developing to providing to sustaining, and we're giving number values 1 through 4 in each one, so that the teachers could be able to assess the students, but also talk to the students about where they're being successful and where they need to improve, and making that link to their real life, and making that link into the things they're doing in their life currently and what they're going to do in the future. Because obviously, we're all human, so we're not going to get all sustaining and all 4s and everything. But we may be doing a 4 in one of the indicators and a 2 in another, and then you can take that average and come up with your number. And those are the numbers that you're seeing on the report cards. It was a great day, just want to say, when we got together as a staff and got to do this. And anytime we get together as a staff and we're working on stuff, there's a lot of joy in there and a lot of fun in that.
So what's happening in the classrooms is each of the departments picked 2 to put on the report cards for this first year, and a different 2 the next year, and a different 2 the next year. So when the students are taking English 9 through 12, all 7 elements will have been experienced in their English class by the time they graduate. And the idea here is for them to do an activity. I can't remember which departments are working on Pathfinder right now. We'll get to that in just a minute. But Pathfinder activities are happening in the classes. The teachers are coming up with projects, presentations, group work that they'd be doing together that would be measured with that rubric on Pathfinder. So the kids have a clear picture of what it means to be a Pathfinder. A real-life example, all of the 8th grade through 11th grade students are now picking all of their classes online through Aspen. We've had presentations to families over the last couple of weeks and to all the kids, and that's a good example of being a Pathfinder. They're charting their own course for their own future. It's a skill set they need to have. All right, so let's go on to the next one, and this is on the, remind me here, the next step was how the departments actually picked them. Mr. House, do you want to do this part?
So what we decided is that it would be the best use of teachers' ability to give feedback if they could focus on 2 areas every year. And over the course of, as Dr. Lord just explained, over the course of 4 years, every department would have assessed all 7 elements. And the reason behind that is we saw other models in which if we had an artist creative element, it would be done by the art department in a school. Or if it was a problem solver, it would be done by the math department. Now what we thought about this was that limits student thinking. Students should not think that creativity only exists in an art room and problem solving only exists in a math room. That every department has the same sorts of qualities, just with different content. And that students need to understand it's about thinking. It's not about content-specific learning. So by doing this, we're rotating and giving every teacher the opportunity to really focus in on 2 each year, so that within 4 years, they're experts at being able to assess all 7 elements in the classroom. So we have a chart of all the different departments and how they're going to progress over the next 4 years.
I think that also shows a connection between all the departments in the school, so that the students can see that we're all working together, so that you, as Jared just referred to, you're not just problem solving in a math class. You're not being creative only in an art class. Many problems are solved creatively. So I think that really shows that connection with the students.
So this is something that, again, very few high schools are able to do because usually randomly teachers were given a professional learning time during the school day. What we've done here is assigned a department to a particular period. So all the math teachers in the building are off first period. They have a formal meeting every Thursday. All of the world language teachers are off second period. They have a formal meeting every Tuesday. All of the English teachers are off on third period. They have it every Friday. Very few high schools are able to do this. We've got a very strong student information system. There's a very strong algorithm that builds master schedules that can look like this. This is a great way for the teachers to have conversations about kids, about student work, and to meet during the school day about these kinds of activities. It's very rare, and this is one of the things that was going to really highlight this school. I'm telling you folks, people from New England are going to come to Peabody High and say, how did you do that? This is big. This is really big news for us to be able to have teachers during the school day to have this time. You don't have to pay them after school. They're getting together to talk about curriculum. They're getting together to talk about vision of the graduate. They're getting together to talk about assessments. They're getting together to talk about projects. These are the things that are happening during their professional learning communities. It's really coming to life. at the high school as a result of that structure. We're going to try and do it again next year, even if we do get a new schedule. So here's a sample report card that went out last quarter, for first quarter. Mr. Haas, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so when you look at the report card, which again has a slightly different look to it now that we have Aspen, you want to imagine that when it comes time to assign grades, a teacher would give a grade in their subject, and that would be based on the rubrics they give in their class, their syllabi, and their content. But at the same time, now every teacher is putting on the report card a 1 to 4 score for 2 standards. And using those rubrics, you're able to see that there are multiple teachers, usually 2 to 3 teachers, giving a score for each of the different levels. Now, one of the things we're looking at as a school is the student getting a, let's say, a developing in math problem solver similar to a problem solver in geometry? And it's helping us to calibrate. How do we actually assess? It is one of the most difficult things to assess human skills. It's very easy to assess when you give a test and you have multiple choice and there's a right and a wrong answer. When you're talking about people developing as individuals, it's not an easy science. So what we're trying to do is give teachers a little bit of latitude in this pilot year, where we're talking with students and saying, you know, we're going to give you a score based on the teacher's best interest, what they're thinking, the assessments they've developed to help develop this score. But we're also going to use this data in the long run as a school to analyze, are we calibrated correctly? Is this the right way to assess? Do we need to change this? Because we're trying to get closer and closer to giving good feedback to students so that when we graduate a high school student and we say you're a 3 or 4, we can more guarantee that student is going to be successful or have the opportunities to be successful at what they want to pursue.
One of the things educators talk about is that wanting to have students to be self-motivated, wanting students to have a stake in their education. But in fairness to students, when have they ever been taught that? When have we ever given them the opportunity to teach them what it is to take responsibility for their education and take responsibility to be self-managers? And this is allowing us to do this, to teach them to be problem solvers, to teach them to be team players. They've never been really taught that before, so this gives us a chance to help them with that.
So this last part was the best part for me. This is so much fun for me to look at data. I know everybody's very excited looking at these charts. Hundreds of hours of work here. No, these charts are basically what DESE is doing with MCAS and taking a look at analyzing subgroups and looking at where we're making progress. I did the same thing and with my team looking at the data from the Vision of the Graduate. So NEASC is asking us to look at it in 2 different ways, one at the individual student level so students can see their individual progress, but we're also looking at the whole school. So if we took a look at every single grade assigned, there were 18,818, I love that number, assigned scores for the Vision of the Graduate. And you can see somewhat of a breakdown by percentages, but we're basically seeing a similar trend regardless of the area. We're seeing between 50 and 60% of our students are meeting 3s and 4s. So if we thought of that like MCAS, 50 to 60% of our students are passing. But at the same time, that also illustrates that 40% of our students are not demonstrating the required skills in order to be successful in the real world. Now that tells us something as a school, that we need to not only be focusing on our content, we also need to be focusing on doing explicit instruction and scaffolding of how do you effectively communicate? How do you set goals for yourself? How do you maintain what you're good at, and how do you know what things you need to work on? These are all skills that need to be taught. So part of us examining students where they're at is also helping us to develop our curriculum and see where our holes are. What things do we need to improve on all the way K through 12 in order to put out a student who can be successful anything they want to do in life.
So when we finished this presentation yesterday, there's one district, a small district in Maine with a middle school, high school, and elementary school all in one place that has district level accreditation. If we want to brand this district, we can get district level accreditation from the Wingate Association of Schools and Colleges. That would mean something to the entire region of New England if we were going to be one of the first districts to do this. Not easy, but if we can put this, K-12, this is what, I'm sorry, it gets me emotional. This was Kara's vision for every kid in this city. And she and I talked about this last summer, and we thought, wow, if we could make this happen in our town, you're going to bring businesses here, parents are going to want to have their kids here. We just had 2 families register at Peabody High. They're taking their kid out of private school because they want to come to the high school next year. I mean, that's awesome. Get ready. This place is going to take off like a rocket. And it's because of this right here. It really is. I mean, it's not going to be cheap. It's going to cost some money, big surprise. But the thing that's happening here for your kids, for your community, for your teachers, this is magic dust. It really is. And people think it's going to go away. It's not. The accreditation institution for the New England is the one for the whole nation. There are 7 other accrediting institutions in the nation, and they're all coming to us to see how we do this. We're in the best region, in the best state, in the best area, the North Shore of Massachusetts, to make this stuff come alive. This is international stuff. We heard a guy speak yesterday about how international schools are coming here to figure out how to do this overseas. I can't express how big this is. And Kara and I had great conversations about this, and I really hope that you want to make it real. I got a lot of passion for it. These guys too, and the teachers on board at the high school are getting more and more and more energized about making this real. So I hope this makes sense to people, because this is huge. In about 2 weeks, we're going to have that same chart for the second quarter data. A few months later, we'll have third quarter. By the end of the year, we'll have a really solid picture about where the vision of the graduate is and where we need to go, at least at the high school. I'm really hoping we can push it down K-8, so when the kids come up to the high school, they are soaring. They're just soaring. Does that make sense? These are skill sets that they're going to have for 60 years. We want to put it on their transcripts eventually, not just their report cards, on their transcript. We have to keep their transcripts for 60 years. Whenever they go to an employer, they go to a college. That college wants to say, yeah, that's great, they have an A, B, C, D, F, and they have a great GPA. How good are you at being a team player? How good are you at being a problem solver? How good are you at being an innovator? How good are you at being a self-manager? How good are you at being a pathfinder? These are the things that people really want to know about when they're trying to assess a student to come into their university, to try to assess the student for taking a job. I want to know that you can work with somebody. If you get a 0 on team player, you're not working for me. But if you get a 4, yeah, come on down. You get what I'm saying? Because you've seen it in all your classes and all your teachers for the entire thing. I'm sorry, I may get too excited about this. Anyway, if I miss anything, if you have any questions, let me know. But this is really big stuff. I can't express it enough. It's going to be New England for the next decade. The NASC has realigned itself to all of this. And that commission saw how Peabody's making it real. It's going to be big. Get ready. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Lord, and Mr. Haas, and Mr. Vassar. Are there any questions or discussion from the committee members? Any comments? Mr. Miko.
I just want to thank, first of all, Dr. Lloyd for doing the great job that he's done at the high school, Dr. Kerbel for stepping in and doing what you're doing down at central office, and to these fine gentlemen who are put this presentation together. You know, as we read the categories, effective communicator, global thinker, pathfinder, problem solver, self-manager, team player, these are all things that teachers probably didn't have to teach 10, 15, 20 years ago. As we know, teachers are more than just teachers. They're mentors, they're guardians, they're big brothers, they're big sisters, mothers, fathers, grandfathers to a lot of these kids. So this is a new shift of education. Dr. Curl and I were talking earlier, and schools aren't schools anymore. You know, we're not a school committee anymore. We do so much more than just educate kids. We heal kids, we help kids, we nurture them, we raise kids. So this is a incredible vision, the vision of the graduate, because it's more, it should be named more than just the vision of the graduate, because we're helping kids get to the next level. We're helping kids be part of society, and some of these kids really, really need our help. And I've always said, and every educator will say this as well, every kid is at risk, and this right here helps us get them away from the risk and towards success. So I just want to thank you guys. I want to thank the whole group for doing what you're doing, because I agree Peabody's back on track, and I've had some people reach out to me and say, I'm going to the high school next year. I'm not going to that private school, and that's what we want. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Well said, Mr. Miko. Anyone else? Well, I would like to add a comment too. I said this once before when the very first time we had the vision of the graduate presented to us. And it was really, it was eye-opening and it was thrilling, because for so many years I would hear that we were, you have to prepare the students to be college and career ready, college and career ready. And you'd hear it from, business people and pretty much anyone that wanted to talk to you. But none of them could say anything concrete. They say, what do you want us to teach? What do you need? And to finally have it presented to us and to see it being integrated into the curriculum. This is part of learning, but it's not in a book. And to know that this is creating a college and career-ready young adult is probably one of the most important lessons that I've ever seen as a school committee member and as a parent. And I am thrilled to see this unfolding. I love having these reports and being able to see how it's actually working. To know that we're leading people in this is really very exciting. And I'm very proud of what you're doing. It's a nice example of such amazing teamwork. And I think that comes through with this whole project. Believe it or not, there are other people at the high school just as excited as these three. And it's nice to see when you talk to other teachers about how it has just really encouraged them to be able to teach, to be able to be innovative, to be able to think this through, and to truly be the teachers that they wanted to be. It really, I think it's helping everyone. So thank you for this report. I'm looking forward to the next one, and really, really do appreciate what you've done, and congratulations on yesterday's presentation. That must have been great.
Yeah, it was good. It was a great night. We had a great analogy. You've heard, you folks are the tip of the spear, right?
Mhm. Yep.
These guys are the thought of throwing it. They're so far ahead of the curve. I'm so proud of them. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Olympio, sorry.
Again, thank you so much. The things that you're teaching, at least in my profession, I had a doll every time I said, well, they don't teach you that in school. Well, gee, they're teaching that now in Peabody. And that is, the textbooks and memorizing things, and that gives you a base, but what makes you a true successful professional in anything that you choose to do is these skills. I mean, these are the things that are going to catapult our students to maybe jump ahead in line over people that, they study for an exam and they might get an A, but these are the life qualities that really is, when they go on interviews and they interact with people, no matter whether they're an electrician, plumber, accountant, lawyer, these are the things that are really going to give them an advantage. And I guess when I see people from Peabody, I say, well, wait a minute, you did learn that in school. So. Anyways, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dr. Crowe.
Okay. Continue. Thank you. Next, let's see, next on the agenda, in my report, the transfer of funds. So it's 5A. So it's in your packet. Do you have that, Bev?
We do.
So the Higgins Middle School, $420 from student events, non-salary to salary revenue, and then $672 from student events to salary revenue. A and B.
A and B. Okay. Mr. Miko?
Make a motion to follow the recommendation of Dr. Furley.
Okay.
Transfer funds.
Second by Mr. Anotis. Okay, thank you. Discussion? Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. These are relatively small, minuscule transfer requests in terms of dollar amounts. I just want to state, and I will support it because they're such small amounts, but typically speaking, I do not like seeing transfers from non-salary items to salary items. Non-salary items pay for certain things that we budget for, We go through a lengthy process in the budget to assure that we cover, I guess, what we as a committee deem as appropriate, and taking money out of those lines for salaries reduces the effectiveness that we provide through the budget process. Like I said, these are very small in nature, so I will support it, but just moving forward, perhaps we have a conversation before considering transferring from non-salary to salary.
Anyone else? If I may, I have a question, Dr. Kerbel. As far as the transfer, I do see on one of these, the reason was for custodial
Right.
services.
I'm looking at that.
Is it because the, if you're able to tell us how it was from student events to salary, is that, I wish Mr. Scanlon was here.
Yeah, I can't give you an answer,
Yeah.
but
If I'm not
Let me-
mistaken, this might be associated with like a dance or something like that.
Yeah.
That's right. We do this at the high school, we have to cover a custodian for, cover a dance.
I think
Yeah,
there were two.
Mr. Hockman?
Yeah. My understanding is that they're each for dances to cover for
Yeah.
custodial expenses. And I'm hoping that there was just a misallocation in our budgeting, and we didn't cover the custodian costs that we should have. I'm hoping that that's what it is. I don't know that to be certain, but I believe that they're both to cover custodial.
I think both, I think that's what they're doing. I'm looking at the, both invoices, and it's for custodial fees.
I see it, right here.
So I'm assuming that the event was a school dance, okay, and they used the event,
Yeah.
money from the event to pay for the custodian fees.
Well, that actually was what I was wondering, whether it was money from the event or whether, if we're still waiving fees. We had a policy where PTOs were allowed to have a specific number of events and that we would waive the fee. So I wondered if that was something as well.
Well, this was one was for a dance, they're both for a dance.
Yeah, and that's the type of thing that we normally did, but I'm not sure.
And when we have a dance at the high school, part of the criteria, I tell the students, we need to have at least 100 people that want to come to the dance, because that covers the cost of the DJ, that covers the cost of a custodian, and then we can have the dance. And anything after that is a profit. But if you can't get 100 kids, we can't have the dance. And I would be surprised if that's not what's going on here.
Okay, all right. Are there any further questions or discussion? Okay, roll call vote on the motion?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you.
Okay, next has to do with field trips, 2 field trips. The high school DECA state competition in Boston, February 27th to 29th. And then the second one is the International Nashville, Tennessee, on April 28th to May 4th. So I'm asking the school committee to approve both trips.
Okay. Can I have a motion on Mr. Anotis?
Motion to approve.
Okay, is that on each single one or both?
We can do 2 separate votes if
Okay.
folks want to do that.
Okay, so this one is for
The first one, the DECA trip.
the DECA trip, okay, and seconded by Mr. Amico. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Abstain.
Yes.
All right, and then the second one would be for the
Nashville. Nashville.
Nashville, thank you.
Second.
Okay, so motion made by Mr. Arnottis, seconded by Mr. Amico. Any discussion? Being none, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Abstain.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then the next,
The next one has to do with the essay from the high school, Peabody High School senior Olivia O'Connor, and I met Olivia. And this is, in your packet, is an essay that she wrote and that she read at the Legacy Wall Reveal. And I want to make sure that you have that in your packet.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I want to thank Olivia for sharing this with us. And just make sure, one other thing. Okay. I want to recognize Jessica Basselier. If I'm saying the last name right, Jessica is shadowing me on Government Day.
Oh.
Okay, and so I hope I pass the test at the end of the night. But a reason why I'm pointing out Jessica is because Olivia is a friend of hers. They sat together at the Legacy Wall reveal. So please, when you speak to Olivia, tell her thank you for sharing her essay with us. And that's it, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Kerbel. Any discussion about Olivia's letter?
That was a great letter. I think you should read it to the public. That's a remarkable letter.
It's a beautiful
It was,
essay.
well,
It
it brought
really
tears to
is.
people's eyes. It was really neat, really nice.
Actually, I'll be honest, I was going to ask if, at first I wondered if Jessica was Olivia and was going to read it, but if we might like to invite Olivia back to read this to us, if we could. Would you like to do that?
We're going to make her a star.
Also, through the chair, is there any way we can get that on the website as well, for others to just read it?
Oh, that would be nice.
Good idea, too.
Okay.
Make sure there's no copyright.
Oh, no copyright.
Her name's on it.
All right. We'll invite Olivia to come, and then after she reads it, we'll reveal it on our website.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah, people have to wait and watch it on TV before they can see it on the website. Great
Okay.
idea.
All right, thank you, because it is an outstanding essay, and it's really very touching. Her appreciation for those teachers is really nice to hear from a student. Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kerbel. Anything else?
No, that'll be it, thank you.
Okay. All right, next we have written communications. So, I don't believe we had any tonight. All right. We're going to go to subcommittee reports. Education Subcommittee.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Finance Subcommittee.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. School Safety Committee.
Nothing to report right now.
Okay. Athletics and Wellness.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Quality and Standards, I'd like to ask that policy be put off till the next meeting. I will tell you, I did speak with Mrs. Henry on behalf of the union, and I still have a little bit of work to bring forward to the subcommittee to adjust that policy. So if you would be okay, I would like to just postpone it to the next meeting. Okay. Liaison to Parent and Student Advisory Boards, nothing to report. Building and Grounds, and Mr. Amico.
Yes,
One
through the
question.
chair I'm sorry.
In your packets, do you have the wording for the required vote? If it's not in your packets, I printed a copy.
We don't.
Okay, I have a copy.
Sign the warrants. The warrants?
I'll give you a copy. Thank you.
All right.
So I know that will be part of your report.
Yes, we had a Building and Ground Subcommittee meeting prior to this meeting, and we'll also have another one scheduled for February 11th before our next scheduled meeting, but we do have, we made a recommendation to put in 2 statements of interest for the accelerated program for the west and both the south for new roofs, and I'll read those now.
Thank you.
So, motion by Joe Amico to approve and submit the statement of interest to the MSBA regarding the West Memorial Elementary School. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on January 28th, 2020, prior to the closing date, the school committee of the city of Peabody, in accordance with its charter bylaws and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest from dated January 28th, 2020, for the West Memorial Elementary School located at 15 Bow Street, Peabody, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The MSBA priority selected is the accelerated repair program for the repair or replacements of roofs. The specific object of the statement of interest is to partner with the MSBA for the replacement of the failing roof on the entire facility of the West Memorial Elementary School as articulated in the West Memorial Elementary School SOI. And the school committee hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Peabody School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Miko, seconded by Mr. Hoffman. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Yes.
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 And I wish I could vote. Okay,
That's the second one. Resolve, having convened in an open meeting on January 28, 2020, prior to the closing date, to School Committee of the City of Peabody, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated January 28, 2020 for the South Memorial Elementary School located at 16 Maple Street Extension, Peabody, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The MSBA priority selected is the accelerated repair program for the repair and or replacement of roofs. The specific object of this statement of interest is to partner with the MSBA for the replacement of the failing roof on the entire facility of the South Memorial Elementary School as articulated in the South Memorial Elementary School SOI. And the school committee hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority is in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the City of Peabody School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So moved.
Second.
okay, motion made by Mr. Vico, seconded by Mr. Hoffman. Any discussion? There being none, roll call.
Yes.
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 Again, I wish I could vote.
Also, through our building, through the chair at our building and grounds, we spoke on the center school and the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, and we will be putting in for a statement of interest on both through the core program. Also, there's one more thing that I missed. I think that might be it. Is there, I think that's it. We spoke on those two, and we'll be looking at putting in through the core program, because we desperately need a new center school and we desperately need a new high school. We'd love for that to happen.
Yep. And we got an update on the Welch School.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry,
Just-
and we
that's
also
what
got
it
an
was.
update on the Welch School as
Right.
well, and more information will be coming in the near future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miko. Mr. Hoffman?
If there's no objection, could we please let the record reflect that had Ms. Dunn had the ability to vote in the last two motions for the statements of interest, she would have voted in the affirmative for both the West Memorial School and the South Memorial School.
Oh, thank you, but it's okay. It's
Let the
okay.
record reflect it.
Oh, thank you. Just by way of information for folks, the reason that we voted tonight on the South and the West are because we're applying under one of two programs that the MS
I mean, how is that different than athletic competition? Who pays, so regarding buses for students who travel from Boston to play Salem, for example, in basketball. I'm just thinking out loud. So there has to be policies currently in the handbook already.
Right.
So I'll look at those, and let me get back to you next time.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. All right. Would you like to vote on this now, though? Okay, all right. Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, thank you. And to you, Chair, and Ms. Dunn, as a committee member, thank you for bringing up those points, because I don't have enough information as to what transportation that various grade levels at the high school have utilized to this point this year, and that may change or influence my position on this motion. And in regard to the analogy that Dr. Kerbel made in reference to athletic events, and this is a competition that our students are going forward on, I really would be interested in that policy, but I'd also like to see it budgeted for. I wouldn't want to address this piecemeal moving forward. If this is something that we believe our policies provide for in terms of the cost of transportation to competitions, I would caution you, because there's a trip to Nashville, Tennessee coming up, and we certainly don't want to look into our budget to pay for a trip to Nashville, Tennessee. Our athletic teams typically compete locally. And then my third point is, if this is a trip that's going on during a school day, where it's a morning run to Boston and back, why are we experiencing any cost anyway? We have Peabody Public School buses.
I think I remember this conversation. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they're just going to take them down and bring back. I don't think it's going to cost anything. We have the 6th graders come over from the Higgins to do the planetarium. Didn't cost us anything. The buses picked up 6th graders, brought them over, because it all happens between the time the last bus is dropped off at elementary school and before the high school has to get lined up. So they've got about a 3-hour window in there when they can transport for nothing.
Thank you. So if I may still, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Amico, it sounds like you can assure whoever's made this request that you have the votes to get it through, and I'd like to be one of those votes in the affirmative. If we can just put this on the next agenda so that we can get these answers with the assurance, it sounds like, regardless of what those answers are, that this is going to come to fruition, so that no one needs to be worried of any jeopardy for not taking a vote tonight. I'd appreciate that.
Through the chair, I'd be glad to table it till our next meeting and go from there.
Will that give Decker enough time to make plans?
That'll be February 11th. The trip's not till February 27th, and unless
Okay.
the motion doesn't pass next time around, then
Okay, all right. So
think it-
you'll withdraw the motion?
I'm
but we'll-
confident that it'll pass.
Yes, because I'll be back in my seat now. I'll tell you right now.
But thank you, I appreciate that.
And just one other piece of information for everyone. I do believe that we own our own buses. We have a few of our own, and those buses should not cost anything during the day at all. And I think the issue would be if we had to utilize an outside company, but right now, those buses, they're waiting to be driven.
Sure.
Mr. Amico.
Through the chair of the committee, in defense to Mr. Hockman, it's right. This is happening during the school day, so if it is our own buses, then the only cost is fuel, and if the bus driver is there
Somebody has to have an
already,
easy pass.
But, so if it's outside, I can see that there would be a cost, but if
Yeah.
it's during the day, hopefully it's not a large cost to us other than fuel, and as Dr. Lord said, we take students to and from the high school or within the city during those time limits anyhow, so hopefully there isn't a cost.
Yep, and reaching back into the memories here, I do recall occasionally when there was a field trip into Boston, that the reason that there was a cost involved in the bus was because it did have to be an outside bus, because it wouldn't be able to make it back in time for the regular school runs. So oftentimes there were field trips in and out of Boston during the school day, and that was never a problem. But when an event in Boston, for example, the symphony, if that was going to cut into the time for a bus to make it back into Peabody in time to appropriately pick up and discharge students on the regular routes, In that case, someone would have to hire a bus. But this instance, again, doesn't fall in that, because they're just going to drive in at 11 a.m. and drop the kids off, and they'll be back in plenty of time. So I don't think there's any worries. But if we can get it confirmed, that would probably be good.
And through the chair, to Dr. Kerbel and Dr. Lord, could we also just make sure that it's only one bus, and you know, if they need two, then they need two, depending on how many students. But I believe it's 45 to 50 students, but maybe if we can just double check that as well, so we know that we have enough transportation for the students.
Okay, very good. All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other agenda items? Anything that anyone wants to bring forward?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, any items? Submit them to the mayor. Thank you all.